When we head to Grand Teton, our first night is usually at Falls Forest Campground outside Du Bois, Wyoming. The Tetons were obscured from the fires in California to Canada. Despite the smoke, we enjoyed the wildlife. Our first day ended with a hike to Lay Lake. Next day, our planned float trip was ruined by thunderstorms, so we took a drive, traveling through the muck on the forest roads. Eventually, we got to Grouse Mountain and the dam of Slide Lake. As the day progressed, the weather improved. After 2 days in Tetons, we headed to Yellowstone, seeing Lewis Falls and then the thermal features on West Thumb, next to Yellowstone Lake. In the afternoon, I hiked to Natural Bridge, finding a curious mammoth in the rocks. The following day, we explored the geyser basins, attempting to catch as many predictable geysers as possible. From Old Faithful Visitor Center, we made it out to Morning Glory Pool and then headed back to start catching the geysers.
Grand geyser trying to go. It's pretty early yet. Castle Creation spouting. Considora geyser. Fountain paint pots.
What'd you say it was, John?
Excelsior Crater. At Midway Geyser Basin, we came upon Grand Prismatic Spring, the largest spring in the park, which looks best from the air. That night, we had elk in our campground. The next morning, we headed to Mud Volcano, encountering bison along the road.
Does it say record or does it say?
Yeah, it's saying record.
While at Mud Volcano, the bison came down the hill. Mary headed to the car, and I stayed along the trail, providing two perspectives of the bison.
We're going past this. They're so smart. And then they just go out. That's so cool. That is very cool.
Then on to Yellowstone Canyon, beginning the valley phase. then the view of Lower Falls from a distance and at the brink. The following day, we took the Grand Loop to the northern part of the park, beginning at Gibbon Falls. At Norris Geyser Basin, we toured both the Back and Porcelain Basin. Porcelain Basin. Then on to Mammoth Hot Springs. While it may be August, we left Yellowstone with snow on the mountain passes. Gold was discovered near Virginia City, Montana, creating a town of 20,000 people. Because the town never had a major fire, it has the largest set of buildings from the 1860s in the U.S. That night, we camped at Black Sands State Park. We took the Last Chance tour of Helena, Montana, another gold town. There are many stately mansions. The downtown buildings are built on the original gold claims. We toured the state capitol and then the Montana History Museum, which had a great collection of C.M. Russell paintings. A few days later, we toured the Grand Coulee Dam with this view from the top, as well as the irrigation pumps that can pump 1 billion gallons a day. Then on to Dry Falls. We were at Dry Falls State Park. This is what used to be probably the largest flood in the entire world when an ice dam from the glaciers broke. And what used to be called Lake Missoula, 200 miles long, came down this canyon, formed this waterfall, 60 mile per hour water going through here, tearing at the banks, these basalt volcanic banks. The Vancouver Aquarium had several exciting exhibits, like the Amazon tiger stingray and the hyacinth macaw. But best of all were the tanks of jellyfish. We had hoped to tour other parts of Stanley Park, but had trouble finding parking on this Labor Day holiday weekend. We spent 2 hours wandering Van Dusen Botanical Gardens, which emphasizes trees from various regions. My favorite part was the Heather Gardens. Grouse Mountain is a ski area in the winter, but has numerous activities in the summer. We started with a lumberjack show, which included a guy doing various antics at the top of their 60-foot log sign.
Today,
The highlight was two 17-year-old grizzly bears which had been raised here. They both had been orphaned as cubs, but had been raised as naturally as possible here. They have to hunt for their hidden food and hibernate the winter in a man-made cave. They are locked in, and the fences around their habitat are removed for the ski season. Then we watched a bird of prey show. We ate lunch at the top with a great view of Vancouver Harbor. Returning to the U.S., we stopped in Everett, Washington for the Boeing factory tour. They assembled the 747, 67, 77, and 87 here in a building large enough to hold Disneyland. The next day we toured Seattle. The underground tour gave us the early history of the town, including how toilets replaced outhouses on the beach. But as the tides changed, sewage would explode up the toilets. In 1889, a fire destroyed 33 blocks of downtown, so they rebuilt the city with buildings at least 3 stories high. Then they raised the roads and the sewage system, turning the first floors into basements. Underneath the sidewalks is Seattle's underground. We stopped at Pike's Market and then headed to the Seattle Center. The Coulee Glass Museum has a large selection of Coulee's pieces. Just as interesting were the short films of some of his worldwide projects. Next day was Tacoma and America's Car Museum. I particularly enjoyed the handcrafted cars from the earliest 20th century. An interesting part of the museum was the section on Route 66, the unique diners, motels, and attractions that encouraged vacationers to travel by car. In the afternoon, we went to the Museum of Glass. The most interesting part was watching them work in the hot shot to create a large flask-shaped bottle.
The team works in pairs. And we can notice that each team member here has and plays a specific role. Next step we take is to transfer our piece onto a different rod. Gabe brings over the new handle called the punty. Now this rod will only be temporary, which means it's going to need to break later on in today's demonstration. Therefore, we create a weak spot in that punty that we can use later on. We will now break free the rod we began with. By using a few droplets of water on the neckline, it'll shock that section into breaking. This is always one of my favorite parts also. With a slight tap, the piece is broken free. A slight tap, the piece is broken free.
With Dick and Char, we visited Hurricane Ridge in Olympic National Park.
On Hurricane Ridge, and let's see the view.
We also found deer and marmots here. We headed south, passing Lake Crescent to the Pacific beaches of the park. Beach 1 had a grove of spruce trees with huge burls. In the Lake Quinault section of the park, we hiked through moss-covered maple trees to an old homestead. Next to our campsite was the world's largest cypress, 58 feet in circumference. Next day, we camped at Sequest State Park, where the campsites are underneath a tall canopy of trees. From here, we took a day trip to Mount St Helens. In 1980, the explosion destroyed an area the size of Chicago in less than 4 minutes. A wall of mud flowed down the mountain, completely changing the landscape.
Up at Mount St Helens. And there it is. There's Mount Rainier.
We traveled the Columbia River Highway with our trailer in tow, stopping at La Tourelle Falls, Shepherd's Dell, and Multnomah Falls. We crossed back into Washington near the Bonneville Dam, only 1/5 the power of Grand Coulee. The fun part, though, is to watch the fish swim up the fish ladders.
Just came out, you could see his mouth. That's the kind that girl, what's her name, that girl? Oh, look at that. Blue ones like that, huh?
The last stop of the day was the Columbia River Interpretive Center, with its excellent exhibit on the Eagle Creek Fire of September 2017. Next day's stop was the historic Oregon Trail Center, a well-done museum, and below us we could see the wagon wheel ruts of the trail. At Craters of the Moon National Park, we saw jagged lava and the rope-like Pahoi lava, as well as cinder cones like Infernal Cinder Cone, and later sputter cones. This is a sputter cone. It's created when the lava is sticky and sort of sputters out of the volcano. At the Idaho Museum in Idaho Falls, we lucked out to find a temporary exhibit on steampunk. We even met the creator. The exhibit has a mix of art and science, celebrating science fiction writers H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, and inventors Eastman, Singer, and Metzellinger, whose invention sewed the top of its shoe to its sole, increasing output from a cobbler from 4 shoes a day to 100. The National Reactor Testing Station near here built 52 prototype nuclear reactors. We camped that night outside Salt Lake City and encountered a wall of smoke coming down the valley. We decided to visit the canyon section of Dinosaur National Park. A paved road gives you many views of the canyons. We're at the end of Harper's Corner Trail in the canyon section. This is Whirlpool Canyon, formed by the Green River. And we continue on, and you can see the green again. and the canyon surrounding it. And now come into the picture is the Yampa River, which joins the green right at the tip of Steamboat Rock, which hides the junction right here. We ended our trip the next day at Fish Creek Falls in Steamboat Springs.